These are 7 mistakes to avoid on your next SAT. For number 1, we have doing algebra when you should be using Desmos. If you see a problem like this and your first thought is to try and solve it by hand, you've already made a mistake. I have students in the 14 and 1500s that still try and do these by hand, but in reality, you're just wasting time. Desmos can solve these in a matter of seconds. It doesn't matter how good you are at algebra, Desmos is going to do it faster and get it right more often. For number 2, we have not double checking what the question is asking. Far too often I see students solve and try and find the value of y and not realize that the question is actually asking for the value of x. Here's another example of a very easy problem that many of my students miss. The angle might be 104, but they're asking about b. If the angle is 2b, then b is just 52. Always double check what the question is asking for. Whether you're at an 1100 or a 1500, this might be the reason you're losing points. Okay, for number 3, we have not using regressions. Regressions have been around long enough now, where if you don't know how to use them at all, you're behind the curve. Although regressions might look scary at first, they can actually be used to solve the scary problems. Regressions can be your best friend if you learn how to use them. For example, they can solve multi-constant problems with one line of code. I actually already have a whole video explaining how to do that, so I'm going to try and link that here if I can figure out how. Regressions can instantly solve any one variable equation. Something that pops up all the time is cross multiplication. If you don't like cross multiplication or don't want to waste time doing it, you can simply type it into Desmos. Instead of trying to look at the line on the graph and figure out what number is our solution, we can simply change two things and Desmos would tell us the answer without having to look on the graph. So one thing we always need to change with regressions is the equal sign turns into a tilde. To use a tilde, all you need to do is hit Shift and the button under Escape. That little squiggly line is what we call a tilde. So that's one change. The other change is we can change x to x1. Now that we've done this, we see our missing value is 280. This can be used in a variety of situations to save time and make sure you get the correct answer. If you don't like x1, you can also just pick a variable. A lot of times I simply just do a, and it works just the same. This trick also works for a lot of equivalent expression problems. So if you ever have a problem like this, simply set the equations equal to each other since the problem tells us they are equivalent. You might get an error to start off with, but that's fine. Let's simply change the equal sign again to a tilde, change all of our x values to x1s, and right now we're getting a value of a and b if x1 was 1. To solve for these constants now, I just have to give x1 some values. I personally always do x1 equals random 10, and it just plugs in 10 random values for x. You could also do x1 equals a list of values, as you see here. Either one is fine. I prefer the first one, but both will work most of the time. As you see from these two lines, we have the value of a and b. If you want more practice, here's another problem where we could try the regression trick. Number 4 on the list of mistakes is spending too long on one problem. I can almost guarantee that everyone watching this video will run into a problem on their next SAT that they don't know how to do right away. If you spend a few minutes and still have absolutely no idea where to start, move on. Problems like that should be flagged and left for the end. It's too often that I see students get hung up on one problem and end up doing poorly on the entire section simply because they didn't give themselves enough time to do the rest of the problems. Being able to identify the hardest problems and leaving them for last is extremely important. Make sure to not get tunnel vision when taking the exam. No one problem is worth 20 minutes of your time. Also, if you want to know how to do this problem on Desmos, I actually showed the lines of code needed earlier in this video, so you can go back and find that. Number 5 would be not learning math vocabulary. There's going to be a lot of questions that give you information, but many of the students that I see on a daily basis don't realize the information given to them on each problem. This is because the information is hidden in certain words that you need to learn. For example, if you were to see a problem like this, the first thing you should notice is that it's an isosceles right triangle. What does that tell me? Isosceles means two sides are the same and two angles are the same. If it's a right triangle, the only way this is possible is with a 45-45-90 triangle. So, if I know math vocabulary, every time I see right isosceles triangle, I know to use the 45-45-90 special right triangle rules. The same would go for infinite number of solutions versus no solutions, parallel versus perpendicular, and the one most students struggle with are the quadratics vocabulary. If you don't understand the relationship between factors, x-intercepts, solutions, the zeros, then you're going to miss some important information on a problem and not know how to solve it. Number 6 would be thinking that the SAT formula sheet is enough. Although it's good to reference the SAT formula sheet, there are many formulas they don't give you that you should know walking into the exam. A few that come to mind would be slope formula, equation of a circle, product of solutions, sum of solutions, discriminant formula, and vertex form for a quadratic. I personally think you don't need distance formula because you can always use Pythagorean theorem to find the distance of a diagonal line. You also don't need quadratic formula. For most of those problems, you can plug them into Desmos and figure out the answer that way. They don't give you surface area, but I don't think you need to memorize those either. For those problems, simply take it one face at a time and find the area of each face. The last and most common mistake that I see from my students and the people I tutor every day is not practicing consistently. Consistent practice is the best way to get better. Even if you're just doing 15 minutes a day, maybe 5 or 10 problems, if you stack that day over day for a month, your growth will be faster and more significant than it ever has been before. Right now, many students are on spring break, and I can guarantee that they aren't doing problems. If you can get yourself to do 5 math problems every single day, you'll be ahead of 99% of students. Let me know in the comments if there's any mistakes that I missed. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more content.